eyelash transplants are, in fact, practiced in the modern day.
Yes!
Actually, some of them will use your pubic hair.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! That's what I said! Oh my god, I don't know why I got so excited. Hi YouTube! My name is Riri and today is another day of reacting. And this time we're gonna be watching horrifying Victorian fashion trend. I'm scared. I'm scared and afraid of what we will witness. But we have to. Okay? Let's go.
Horrifying Victorian fashion trends.
Uh-oh.
Ah, the Victorian age. Great Britain's King William IV dies a death in 1837 and his 18-year-old niece Victoria takes the throne. This era marked a huge turning point.
Wait a minute. The Victorian era name comes from an actual person named Victoria? What? I always thought that the name Victoria came because of the Victorian era. But I guess, oh my god, it makes sense. But it also doesn't because what came first? The name or the era? And then the name? It's like, did the egg come first or the chicken come first? I made it all more confusing. I'm sorry.
In the history of the British Empire. Slavery had just been abolished, stricter labor laws were seeing less children getting smeared in gears, industry was booming, and literacy and education were on
How to read good and bake a big brick of bread.
our eyes. Sure, there was still overwhelming poverty and disease, but,
Yeah.
you know, one step at a time. Another aspect that became a main focal point during the Victorian age was that of modesty. Ironically enough, the idea of modesty, at least for the upper class, was flexing as much wealth as possible. The easiest way to do that was by how you dressed. It was a quick way to tell anyone crossing your path what your status was. For instance, when you're out in public and you see a dude decked out in Supreme brand everything, you know without a doubt that that guy is a douche. You know.
Unless it's one of those ripped, homeless type of Supreme outfits where you don't know if it's expensive or not, you know?
You know when you watch movies or shows that depict the rich and the royals and you always see them wearing those big bulky dresses? Well, they were a very real fashion trend in the mid-19th century. Women would have layer after layer of dress slammed onto them to achieve that iconic bell-shaped look. I mean, these things were sometimes up to 8 layers thick. So while dudes were rocking simple coats and slacks, some women were drowning in their dresses, which,
8 layers!
depending on the material type, could weigh upwards of 30 pounds. Help! Thankfully, in 1856, a Parisian inventor came through with a product designed to lighten the load. The crinoline cage. A large brace fitted under a single dress layer that gave all of the desired poof with far less pain. Reducing the overall weight burden by up to 75%, the structure was fashioned from lightweight steel rings strapped together to form the desired shape. With less layers to worry about, dresses could be exaggerated further with wider, fuller, and frankly ridiculous proportions, with dresses commonly reaching up to 6 feet in diameter. I mean, them things are girth. It wasn't long until the crinoline craze completely flooded the market, and
Then you need like double, triple, quadruple doors to go through because your dress is 6 feet and it's a bunch of metal so it doesn't even bend.
to that whole industrial revolution thing going on, articles of clothing that took weeks of handcrafting could now be mass-produced for pence on the pound, meaning that even higher-end fashion could be enjoyed across all societal classes, albeit with cheaper materials. But while the dresses offered women a more acceptable mobility to style ratio, it came with a few inherent dangers. The first and most obvious was the sheer size. Although they were looking fine as hell,
that sounds huge. You know, the funny thing is, I remember watching a movie as a kid. I don't remember which movie, but it had to be a princess one with a dress like that because I was actually jealous and wanted one. Like, I wanted the thing that makes the dress poofy.
Dresses to be flat out inconvenient. Getting on and off public transportation, taking up space in small shops and rooms, constant trips and falls, it became a public nuisance. In an act of horrible judgment, some women took the trend into the workplace. The highly industrialized, full of moving parts workplace. Now, if you're familiar with any videos watermarked with a Live Leak logo, you know that loose fabric and heavy machinery do not mix. According
What
to
do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? I'm scared.
an 1864 Irish newspaper, a young worker woman passed by an unguarded, steam-powered 4-inch mechanical shaft. Her dress was snagged and she was instantly entangled and mangled in the shaft for 3 whole minutes before the machine could be stopped. Oops. Her spine was snapped in multiple spots and she died shortly after. Now, since mangled corpses can negatively affect productivity, factories began banning the dresses on the floor.
Yeah, I wonder why.
The other danger, of course, was fire. You know, that very element that drove every aspect of human life at the time. Heat, fireplaces, light, oil lamps and candles, machinery, steam boilers. Fire was everywhere, and these crinoline-clad ladies were essentially walking kindling. Now, thousands, I shit you not, thousands of deaths were recorded as a result of crinoline dresses catching fire and engulfing their wearers.
The literal pain that the women have gone through for fashion is crazy.
So while there were documented deaths on the individual level, like 14-year-old kitchen maid Margaret Davy, whose dress ignited while reaching for spoons on a fireplace mantle, or 16-year-old Emma Musson, who burst into flames after a spark from a nearby kitchen fire landed on her dress, there was perhaps the most infamous incident involving the crinoline dresses, one that didn't even occur in Great Britain. On December 8, 1863, a fire broke out in La Iglesia de la Compañía de Jesús in Santiago, Chile.
Okay.
Yeah, I took Spanish in high school.
Figured.
The death toll was estimated to be
You're
between
fluent.
2,000 to 3,000 people, with the overwhelming amount of those deaths being credited towards the crinoline dresses that most of the women were wearing that night. Yeah, they weren't the direct cause of the fire, but with so many poofily dressed women fleeing towards the exit at once, people were tripping left and right, frantically trampling over each other's bodies in an attempt to save their own lives. The fire quickly swept across the flammable fabric masses, consuming the crowd. A wall of human bodies blocked the only exit, trapping any hopeful survivors inside before the entire roof caved in on them. Yeah, you didn't think a story about dresses would get this tragic, did you?
No. You know what? I remember when I said when I was a kid I wanted to try on one of those. Yeah, I take it back. I take it back now.
Luckily, people began to realize the downside of the fashion trend, and by the late 1860s, just over a decade after its appearance on the market, crinoline dress shapes began to shrink, shifting any junk to the trunk. Slimmer and much more manageable dress sizes became the standard with the rise of the bustle in the 1870s, much to the dismay of the local undertakers. Stupid.
Wow.
The last thing you want to think of after proudly painting your house is,
did I just poison my entire family?
No.
Unfortunately, that's a question that many fellas in the 1800s had to ask themselves. Also why they had the audacity to paint their walls green. But not just any green, Scheele's green. Invented in 17...
All toxic. Oh. Like, what is up with people in, like, previous ages, you know? And the toxic paint. Lead paint, asbestos paint, Scheele's green. My God.
1975 by one world-renowned Swedish chemist, Carl Wilhelm Scheele. That's Scheele.
Oh,
Like the
Scheele.
tank. This guy had a huge amount of discoveries under his big smelly belt, including various elements like barium, tungsten, chlorine, and even oxygen. During one of his daily routines of faffing about with various dangerous chemicals, he managed to accidentally create the new pigment. Damn, that's green as fuck. Carl spent the next few years perfecting the synthesis and formally published the recipe in 1778, though he warned of some potential health issues down the line should it be mass-produced.
The small, fine lettering. That no one paid attention to. And let me guess. They all dyed their houses green. Green on the inside, green on the outside, green on in your house, in your neighbor's house, in your neighbor's neighbor's house, in your neighbor's 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 house. It's everywhere.
You see, this shade of green was made from acidic copper arsenite. Arsenite? That sounds like arsenic. Yes. Yes, it does. 'Cause it is. Although very toxic, it was believed at the time that only those who directly ingested this stuff would be susceptible to its side effects.
They
And you
actually
wouldn't slam
put
down a big
poison.
bucket of tasty green goop, would you? No. After inventing the shade of green, Scheele unfortunately turned a shade of blue as he passed on from this world in 1786 at the age of 43, luckily before seeing the consequences of his creation. With the recipe now published,
Let Let me guess. Was it the poison that was in the paint?
Manufacturers were looking to turn that green into gold. And by the early 1800s,
Oh, no.
Scheele's green was used as a colorant in a wide variety of products, including dyes, paints, books, wallpapers, dresses,
God, oh my
and of
God.
course, children's toys. Yeah, everyone wanted their own bit of green.
It's
Hell,
everywhere.
Even Queen Victoria herself had her own green wallpaper to admire. With such substantial demand, factories pushed their workers hard to meet that quota. And this is when the health risks became apparent. Factory fellows working with the arsenical dye reported various sores and symptoms related to arsenic poisoning, though they were largely dismissed or silenced. In
The poor workers, man. The poor workers.
the late 1850s, medical reports began circulating highlighting reports of arsenic poisoning from wallpaper. Now, homes back in the day
Yeah.
didn't have the sophisticated climate control we have now, especially when it comes
humidity.
to humidity. So a common problem with wallpaper was that it would get all moist and moldy. When this happened, the wallpaper would let off a toxic arsine gas, which slowly poisoned the homeowners. The paper was also susceptible to flaking, with bits of green getting snorted into your airways and into your lungs, and that's no good either. While toxic, arsenic also has the bonus property of being carcinogenic. Gives you cancer. It's estimated that thousands of people were either dead or dying from arsenic poisoning.
Who could have guessed that poison in a paint that is going to be used everywhere might actually poison people? Who would have guessed? Maybe the person that made the paint, he guessed it, probably, but then decided it was his time.
Across the early and mid 1800s, people got sick, but knowledge surrounding arsenic poisoning itself was not clearly defined, so doctors often misdiagnosed the ailments, attributing them to something entirely different. Hi, well, there's a problem, boyo.
Oh,
You've been
no.
fingering too many leprechauns. Hi, so true. But the nail in the chromatic coffin came in 1861 with 19-year-old Matilda Schurer. She was a flower maker. With the boom of industry on everyone's doorstep and their surroundings getting grayer, browner, and sadder, people yearned for the reminders of the brilliant colors of nature, mainly flowers. So naturally, this opened up the market for artificial flowers. An element of the false bouquets were leaves. What color are leaves?
The green.
Come on, tell me. What color?
Green.
Green, that's right. Sheila's green dyes were dustified and applied to fabric leaves to give them that vibrancy. Well, just like the flaking wallpaper, that dust nestled itself in workers' internals, causing crippling illness. Matilda reportedly had oozing sores across her skin where
Oh,
she handled the
God.
dust, with the whites of her eyes turning green and even violently vomiting.
Putrid puke. Now, how could you make puke sound worse?
Bright green liquid. She sadly died on November 20th, 1861. With all these green symptoms, doctors could no longer ignore the reality. Sheila's green was deadly. Word
Yep.
spread and consumers dropped their green goods. Dresses were dumped, wallpapers were ripped from their walls. By the 1870s, manufacturers were forced to use less vibrant but arsenic-free greens in their products. It's not easy being green.
Yeah. High color.
Jumping back to the theme of prim and proper fashion in the Victorian age, one way to appear as an upstanding member of society was to keep your head up. Literally. A straightened posture was praised amongst the societal types. But why train yourself to keep your neck straight when you could just have your clothes do it for you? This is where the stiff high collar came in, and for a while, it had a chokehold on men's fashion. While giving
Get it? So cold because it's a color. It's a choker. Oh my god, he looks terrified.
fantastic circulation restricting support, it also served a secondary purpose of providing its wearer with a crisp and clean appearance.
Oh
You see,
my
with the
god.
many layers of Victorian fashion, undershirts were mostly covered up, save for around the length of your neck. Getting your clothes cleaned was expensive and time-consuming. Why clean a shirt that barely anyone sees anyway when you could just give the illusion of cleanliness? High collars were
Yep.
detachable by design, so instead of washing an entire shirt, you just needed the collar to look clean. The collars were ironed and
True. I mean, he has a point.
heavily starched, making them extremely rigid, able to keep your chin up even if you're feeling down. Oh.
Okay,
But
when
these
did I think it was
restrictions
gonna
and
be metal?
constrictions led to some afflictions. For one, these things were just plain uncomfortable. By the late 1800s, the collars pretty much reached the jawline, further exaggerating the posture to the point of ridiculousness and therefore danger. Even physicians at the time warned of the inherent problems of the collars, including their tendency to put too much pressure on the carotid arteries. Those are the ones that supply blood to your brain. Don't want to be blocking them things. Although a rare occurrence, it was still a risk. Unfortunately, it was a risk that took the lives of a few unlucky gents. In September of 1888, a young fella by the name of John Kreutz
I feel uncomfortable even seeing them wear it.
he drunkenly passed out on a bench one night in Druid Hill Park in Baltimore, Maryland. According to his autopsy, John was slumped over with his head drooping forward, pushing his stiff high collar into his neck, which cut off his air supply and choked him to death. There was also the case of William Dillon, who was found dead in his hotel room. He died from asphyxiation after severe indigestion had swollen his neck in his sleep.
Why didn't he take it off when he went to bed? Or at least in his room? I get it. You do things for fashion and, to look cool. But since you are back in your room, take it out!
Compressing it to his collar. Yeah, it's a completely stupid way to go, but fashion back then was more about class than comfort. Luckily, the age of the stiff high collar was about to fold. Shifts towards more casual, comfortable clothing began to take hold in the 1920s and the 1930s. You also had the electric washing machine make its way to market around the same time, so dirtbags could now clean their shirts and
Of course, they have a woman holding it.
no longer needed their collars. Thankfully, the high collar remained out of the spotlight for a while. But then that shit came back to haunt us in the 2000s. God, I could practically smell the Axe body spray.
Oh God. Mercury hats.
Now this is a well-known one when discussing deadly fashion trends. After all, the whole phrase "mad as a hatter" came from the Victorian era. With
Wait,
the extravagance and intricacies of elaborate outfits in that time, you also needed to
See, this dress reminds me of the evil mother in Coraline when she turns into a spider, like a half a spider, and she has this big thing in her back. Yeah.
accessorize. That meant wearing a fancy-ass hat on your fancy-ass head. So the hat business was brimming with eager customers. You had tall hats, small hats, even sailor straw hats, sun hats, wide hats, flowered hats, and side hats. Some hats for him, some hats for her. Hats stacked with feathers and even ones with fur. There were endless choices for a fashionable head. It's just a shame that many of their makers were gonna wind up dead. The art...
But of course, we cannot have nice hats without a little poison.
of hat making was tedious and dangerous, not just because of needles and such, but the chemical processes involved. Yeah, nothing was really safe from harsh chemicals in those days. One of the most common materials used to make hats was felt. If you're unaware, felt is basically fibers matted together and compressed into a single material. In order to do this reliably and quickly in the 1800s, a process called kerating was performed. Animal pelts, usually beaver or rabbit, would be saturated in a mercuric nitrate solution. This allowed the fibers to separate from the hides and make them more pliable and more easily formed into the sheets of felt. This process also turned the furs a dark orange color.
But that means it drowned in literal poison.
Hence the name kerating. Ooh, pretty. If you are a frequent watcher of my stuff, which you should be, you know that I've gone into detail about mercury poisoning before,
so
but
it just absorbed all of it. Mercury poisoning 101.
Mercury vapors from the kerating process were, obviously, very toxic. This excessive, prolonged exposure subjected victims to mercury poisoning, which can evolve into a neurological disorder known as erethism, or the Mad Hatter's disease.
Wait, erethism? It's a Greek word. It comes from the word erethismo. So that means, yeah, like being sensitive to something, like you're having a reaction to something.
It's characterized by personality, physical, and neurological symptoms ranging from low self-confidence, depression, and irritability to delirium, headaches, and uncontrollable shakiness or tremors. It's an exhausting and devastating disorder, and it's sadly way more common than people realize. According to a publication by the American Journal of Industrial Medicine, between 15 to 50% of hatters surveyed in the armpit that is New Jersey showed symptoms of mercury poisoning in 1886, increasing to 60% by 1889 and hitting an apex in 1934 at around 80%.
80%!
As a double whammy, many of the more ornate hats at the time donned artificial flowers, most of which were dusted with the arsenical Scheele's green.
It's double the poison! They said double it and give it to the next person. Oh my god. A poisonous hat was not enough. Add poisonous flower still.
Now, while the dust certainly affected the customers, there's actually very few, if any, reported cases of mercury poisoning resulting from simply wearing the hats. This is because the harmful vapors were either fully baked off in the manufacturing process or essentially sealed within the material, unable to affect the end user. While the adverse health effects of mercury poisoning were well known at the time, it actually wasn't until 1941 that mercury usage was banned in hat manufacturing. And it wasn't even out of medical concern. You see, mercury was a key component in artillery detonators, so the Allies needed all of the mercury they could get to drop some freedom on the Nazis in World War II.
So they didn't care about the workers literally getting hurt from the poison. They only cared about having enough for the war.
As for the UK, however, mercury usage in hat making was never formally banned. It just fell out of favor once safer chemicals like hydrogen peroxide were substituted in around the 1960s. Nice one, gents.
Yep. Sewn-on eyelashes. What? Wait a moment. There's a movie that actually has a scene like that. It's called The Ugly Stepsister. And it has a scene where they sew the eyelashes on her because she wants to be pretty. And she gets a bunch of like plastic surgery and stuff to be pretty. It's horrifying.
Now this one's gonna be short because... If you are a fine fellette that partakes in the use of false eyelashes to accentuate your eyes, be glad that you weren't around in the Victorian age. Although rare, there is some evidence that suggests a French procedure for sewn-on false lashes. Yeah, no thanks. According to an article by French-sounding yet English publisher Henry Leboucher, a specialist, most likely a wig maker or some other cosmetic expert, would pluck a few healthy hairs from your head and with a very fine needle, pierce the eyelid and thread the hair through in various tight loops of varying length, creating a much greater lash density and thus a more robust look. The problem here is that your eyelids have a lot of nerves in them. That's by design to alert you of any immediate threats to your precious eyeballs.
I cannot even go to the eye doctor. I'm stressing.
Well, it's a bit of a bummer here because you're going to be feeling each and every prick of the needle as it glides through your skin and pulls the hair through. The healing process, though, was rather quick, if you were lucky. Aseptic technique, the general practice of hygienic medical procedures, was still relatively new and not yet widely adopted, save for specialized invasive surgeries. So hopefully the fellow ramming a needle in and out of your eyelids sterilized it to some degree.
No.
Otherwise, you're going to be dealing with a
What is this image, bro? What is this image? This procedure is literally horrifying. Okay, but that reminds me of a clip I watched on TikTok like a while ago. I think it was a show about like plastic surgery and stuff, like botched plastic surgery. And there was a woman there that got eyelash extensions that came from her pubic hair. What? That's insane. That's
nasty
insane.
infection. And that's if he's got steady hands. You ever try threading a needle? That shit ain't easy.
Nope.
So consistently catching your lids can prove a challenge in itself. Not to mention all while avoiding your very stabbable oculars just a few millimeters away. Now, I have to stress that the only evidence of this procedure comes from 3 articles from the time period, with no documentation as far as formal...
Irresistible eyes may be had by transplanting the hair. If your eyes are unattractive, you may make them irresistible by transplanting the hair. What? Bro! It's literally an advertisement!
...instruction manuals and medical journals. This suggests that the process was either very rarely performed, or it might be a big fat fib. Hopefully the latter. But we just simply can't ignore the possibility of what some unfortunate fellettes may have endured to make their eyes pop.
Yeah, so while editing this, I found out that eyelash transplants are in fact practiced in the modern day.
Yes!
Actually, some of them will use your pubic hair.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! That's what I said! That's what I said! This is crazy! You watched the same clip!
Because it's naturally curly.
Yes!
What are we doing?
Oh my god, I don't know why I got so excited. It's like you read my mind.
Oh, come on, more eye stuff? Ugh, fine. Thankfully, this one doesn't involve direct damage by ways of foreign metal objects. This one was just sheer stupidity. Okay, so you know how in like cartoons and such,
Hello.
characters may do that iconic, adorable eye enlarging move that just melts your heart? Well, Victorian women were ahead of the game on that. This is the Belladonna plant, more commonly called deadly nightshade. It's extremely toxic if—
So Belladonna means beautiful lady, beautiful woman. Already from the name, we know where this is going.
ingested and can even mess you up if you so much as touch it. Severe rashes and blisters are common, and if absorbed through the skin, can cause accelerated heartbeat, headaches, hallucinations, and most notably, dilated pupils. That last symptom, though, actually proved advantageous for emerging ophthalmologists who were examining their patients' eyes. Dilated pupils allow physicians to examine your retinas and optic nerves for any signs of damage or disease.
Yeah, and it's horrible. They put you like eye drops to dilate your pupils, and then for the rest of the day, you're just getting flashbanged by everything. Best experience ever.
But some women wanted to extend that dilation outside of the physician's office. So there's a reason it's called Belladonna. In Italian, it means beautiful woman, so called because it was actually very popular amongst Italian noblewomen throughout the Renaissance, making a comeback a while later during the Victorian age. Simply ignoring all the horrifying side effects, these women only cared about the plant's ability to dilate one's pupils, creating a glassy, alluring gaze that would certainly attract any eligible bachelor with that soulless glare. How could you—
I don't know how it would attract someone. It literally looks like you're a demon, like IRL.
resist? The star of the drops was atropine, the chemical actually responsible for the dilation. Preparation of the drops was relatively simple. It boiled down to decocting mashed up nightshade fibers to extract the atropine. The diluted mix would then be filtered and sometimes mixed with lemon juice in order to apparently brighten up the eyes, whatever that means. But the dilation of your pupil causes blurry vision. While dilated, your pupils can't expand and contract properly to focus on objects. So these women, while looking like deer in headlights, were essentially functionally equivalent, falling over or bumping into things rather frequently.
Yep. Uh-oh. I didn't stop the video in time. I think she's gone. Oh no. No! I was about to say that was me going back home, but that is not me.
This could be especially dangerous near moving vehicles or train stations. Not to mention the fact that repeated or heavy use of the stuff increased the likelihood of experiencing those symptoms I mentioned earlier. It was common for users to deal with pounding headaches and suffer from hallucinations as a result of heavy doses. If they kept insisting on looking like a cave goblin, they risked complete blindness or permanent oversensitivity to light. Thankfully, though, more reasonable ocular fashion trends like mascara and other makeup came into view in the 1920s, causing Belladonna eye drops to evaporate into obscurity.
Maybelline is from then? Listen, the modern eye drops don't have poison in them, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Am I? Right? Thank you for that. Now I'm very much informed, and I know that anything that came from that era is just pure poison. But that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed. I'm horrified and traumatized. I will see you next time. Don't forget to follow me everywhere. And once again, don't forget to say goodbye to me and Hamariri. Bye. Goodbye. Don't wear hats that have poison in them, okay? Or collar, or poofy dresses.